Major support for Out to Lunch is provided by the law firm of Jones Walker, established in 1937 with over 375 attorneys in offices throughout the U.S., providing a comprehensive range of services to a local, national, and international client base. JonesWalker.com. And by Shorten Associates, legal recruiters in Louisiana and Texas. And Orange Theory Fitness, delivering fitness results for a healthier world.
From Mansers on the Boulevard in Baton Rouge, we're out to lunch with editor of the Baton Rouge Business Report, Stephanie Regal. It's business, Baton Rouge style.
Hi, I'm Stephanie Regal. Welcome to Out to Lunch. Baton Rouge often gets an unfair rap for its lack of culture and its perceived status of living in the shadows of New Orleans. But there are lots of talented performing artists and artistic companies here in the capital region. Sometimes you just have to dig a little deeper to find them. Joining me today to discuss this is Jamie Ray, owner of Air Seekers Acrobatic Movement, a professional acrobatic company that focuses on cirque-style and physical theater performances. Jamie is herself a professional movement artist and instructor at the school. Her work is informed by her background in aerial dance, theater, and partner acrobatics. Jamie is a native of North Louisiana, and she moved around the country and learned how to be an acrobat and a movement artist before coming back here and sharing her talents and skills with the local community. Jamie, it's a pleasure to have you here on Out to Lunch.
Hi, thanks for having me.
Also at the table with me and Jamie is Vastine Stabler, Managing Artistic Director of Swine Palace, a nonprofit professional company supporting the educational mission of the LSU Department of Theater. Since its founding in 1992, Swine Palace has produced more than 68 productions, including many regional and world premieres that have advanced the company's mission to produce plays of social relevance. Vastine has been in his current role at Swine Palace since 2018, though he previously was the theater's director of marketing and communication. He's directed more than 40 plays in his native Birmingham, Alabama. He also is a graduate of LSU, where he came for his Master's of Fine Arts. Vastine, it's a pleasure to have you here with us today.
It's wonderful to be here. Thank you so much.
I can't wait to hear about Swine Palace. But Jamie, I want to hear about artistic movement as well, and silks and acrobatics. Tell me exactly what you do.
I like to say that I tell stories with my body. So
people could take that lots of different
they
ways.
certainly could, and they do. But I definitely like the idea of storytelling. I've been in theater my entire life, so it sort of like fueled my fire to find different ways to play characters and just sort of create scenarios. And taking the speech out of it is an extra challenge. But I've always found movement so beautiful, and dancers are so beautiful, and I never was very graceful on the ground. But whenever I was in the air, I felt sort of like I was, and that the limits of the ground were no longer there.
That is so interesting. So you're more graceful in the air than on the ground.
Oh, absolutely.
And so you use trapezes, rings, silks. What do you move with in the air?
All of the above, and then some. We definitely sort of try to get creative in aerial arts, just to see what can be done. I've actually seen performers do acts from saran wrap, like really thick saran wrap.
It better be really thick.
Yeah, it better be thick. But so also on ropes, canvas straps that are sometimes loops, another human body that's hanging from something. So really anything that's suspended can be an apparatus and a form of movement.
And so your company is like a mini Cirque du Soleil?
Oh, I would love to think of it that way. Yeah, absolutely, without all the production money.
But also a school here in Baton Rouge that teaches these arts to students.
Right. We do acrobatic movement instruction sort of at all levels. More now than ever, I am pouring into more of like a performance school. So I've stopped taking, I've stopped taking the weekly classes that are, I want to lose 10 pounds or I want to this, that, the other. I kind of want to hone in on the artistry and the performance aspect of.
Fantastic. Well, speaking of artistry and performance, Vastine, Swine Palace is one of the many hidden gems, on the Baton Rouge art scene, and certainly on the LSU campus. And I know you all have a devout following. But exactly, what is your relationship with LSU? Are y'all part of LSU?
Yeah, I would say now we are. It's kind of evolved over time. I mean, it was originally started with a group of citizens who are local citizens who are interested in it, and then with allegiance with Gresson Doty and some of our other leaders in our department back in 1992 is when we started. So from the onset, it was here. It started like in the Shaver Theater. And so our board is kind of dedicated to it. And the truth of the matter is we couldn't do our stuff that we do the way we do it without all of the facilities and the support and the incredible faculty and staff that work there. And
Of LSU.
Of LSU. So we're very tied to it. And in the last decade, we've really connected our Master of Fine Arts acting program with them. So it's an opportunity for those actors to work with different professionals around the country, with great directors and professional actors from New York and from everywhere. So yeah, we're kind of tied at the hip these days.
So I think people who only are paying a little bit of attention to the theater scene probably just think y'all are an arm of LSU, or like maybe sort of a professional company of LSU.
Well, in a way, we have a unique. There are very few companies in the country who have this unique relationship where they are resident theaters that are on university campuses, and it's a very it's something that we use in recruiting a lot. We get a lot of people from there because you can get your professional card by being there afterwards. But we merge the best of two things. We merge the best of LSU and resource of all of the students there and all the talent we have there. Plus, as I say, we go to New York and cast actors out of New York. We've been doing that for the last show. Yeah, we fly out there. It's really interesting. I was talking to our students the other day. I said, you really got to get down with how well you do your self-tapes today, because our last show we had to replace 2 actors because they got movie gigs or something like that before we started.
So really, really cool.
And so they've got to learn how to audition online.
Yeah.
So that's what.
How do you all differ from like little theater or community theater?
Well, again, there's different types of theaters that are in the world, and we've got two of many types. We've got an academic theater and a professional theater. So our missions are different too, right? I worked in community theater for a decade. I love it, and I know Theater Baton Rouge, they and Jenny and all of them are doing a fantastic job.
Yeah,
I've seen it
I
grown a whole bunch since 2000 when I was here in graduate school, and I was telling her that recently how impressed I was, because she's a graduate of our MFA acting program, one of our proud ones. So, a lot of community theater is driven by the people who are involved, right? The people who are doing the shows, the excitement of working at it, and who are still maintaining, their jobs in life. Now, a lot of them have aspirations and certainly have the skills to be doing it on a professional level, or maybe their parents said, hey, you're not going to make enough money being a professional actor, and are doing it. So, it's just a different direction we can do it. And see, we have some financial resources by virtue we are that allow us to do some challenging productions at a financial level that, say, maybe other community theaters have that opportunity to.
Well, we will. I want to find out some more about that, but I want to bring Jamie back into the conversation because you're talking about financial resources, and I'm wondering what kind of money there is in silks and artistic performances, especially in this market. What kind of demand is there for this really unique service that you are providing as a performer and also as an instructor?
Well, for me personally, as a performer, just being in the city so long as one of the only performers that did it, the demand was great. I had enough to keep me busy and enough to keep my company afloat when I coupled it with the instruction. And I'm glad that you brought it up, because now as we have more and more talent rising and more people ready for performance, the demand is not necessarily there. There's only so many parties that want an aerialist, or weddings that want an aerialist or an acrobatic duo. So I'm moving more into creating my own events where we feature these amazing performers that have put all this work in and are ready to
That's
showcase.
what I was going to ask you. I mean, do y'all actually put on shows that you would sell tickets to and rent theater space somewhere?
Yes, we're actually, I've been speaking with a couple of other studio owners and have recently sort of teamed up with Of Moving Colors.
Oh,
And so I'm training their dancers later today. I've been training them for a while now.
They'll be so excited.
And so I'm kind of trying to create this collaboration of movement artists in this city so that we can make money doing what we're doing, so that it's not so hard to find a gig, you know. Gigs are not always plentiful, and definitely in this town there's slow seasons and busy seasons. And so instead of us all being in competition for what little bit we have, I say, why not just make something bigger and bring everyone to us?
And do you work with Nick? And
Nick Erickson is one of the first people I met whenever I came here and started practicing aerial, and he invited me to a 40-hour workshop at LSU, and I almost died.
So tell our listeners and me who Nick Erickson is. What's
He
the
is
connection here?
I don't know what his title is. He's over at the
he's
physical
associate
theater.
professor, head of the physical theater discipline, but he's also the head of the MFA acting
Yeah.
program too.
Incredibly nice guy. He's always welcomed me in with open
And
arms.
it seems like that would be a good synergy, right?
Yeah, it's great. It's great, and we have a lot of people in the community who do work with him and do use our facilities too. No, it's been great. It's obviously our missions is a lot of training and working with undergraduates and then taking show places. But it is such an exciting thing that people are excited about it. It's an incredible recruiting tool for us for things too. It was interesting when our actors that we had in just New York. One of them in particular wanted to do the Silks class because they do it in New York, and I didn't realize it become such a big.
It has become a big thing, right?
Yeah,
Like we were talking
absolutely.
about before we started recording, right?
Yeah, it's just in the time that I've been doing it, the market has blown up. Like it's just looking at like things like analytics on social media, the amount of hashtags that Aerial Silks used to have and now what it has is like insane.
And so, I mean, we referenced this at the beginning, but for anybody who doesn't know, silks are, I mean, literally they're long silk drapes that you roll yourself up and hang from, right?
They're called double panel if you're
Okay.
talking about that apparatus in particular, but fabric is the overarching term. So silks is the most commonly referred to as the double panels of fabric that are not connected at the bottom, that you climb and create a series of knots, wraps, inverts, drops. That's
Wow.
everybody's favorite. And then there's other types of apparatuses that use fabric but aren't what we refer to
And
as
then
silks.
what do you suspend them from? What kind of apparatus, what kind of infrastructure do you need in your performing arts space to do this?
Well, when we rig a structure, we have to have an engineer come in and we do like a drop load test on it to make sure, because as you know, the human body is very fragile. And so we use, typically we'll have either a beam that we connect a span set over, or all these terms probably don't make
No,
any sense.
you're
but,
making perfectly good sense.
carabiners and we'll loop the fabric through what's called a figure eight, and it's a
Yeah.
big metal piece that you loop it through. And then it depends on the structure. Whether or not the structure is sound for us to rig from, then we go from there. If it's not, I have a steel A-frame that you
Okay.
can set up and take down that travels with me to festivals and things like that.
And you're confident this, right? You've never had a problem with
No,
yourself
I've
or
never-
one of your performers?
No, never.
Do you actually employ performers? You have a little company
I
and
do,
y'all work?
yeah. And it's been growing, and I've been really excited to see its growth over the past 5 years.
How many do y'all have?
We did a show last year, and it was my biggest one, and I had 12 people, so it's not big yet, but
No,
we're
but
getting there.
that's
And then I've
impressive.
added all of, like I said, these dancers from OMC, and they're so eager and they're so strong.
Yeah.
So I think that's going to be a big boom in what I'm doing right now. I'm really
Fantastic.
excited about it.
And how many staffers do y'all employ, Vastine? And I guess your actors come and go depending
Yeah,
on
I mean, it all depends. The staff of Swine Palace is one, and you're looking at it. But there are a lot of people who spend 40 hours a week working on it, but they're coming through LSU. Though I don't know why I'm listed that, because since LSU pays me too. So it's, again, that whole kind of weird world. But, our faculty, all our designers will work on shows, and we have, I don't know, we've got 8 or 9 that are work on that end of the theater, and we have, usually about 10 graduate students who are in their MFA program who are working for us, or working for me right now back at the office.
And
doing
sometimes,
other work.
and then theater students can try out for some of your productions.
Yes, they
So-
do. It's interesting.
And sometimes
This
they
year-
make it in, and sometimes they don't.
Yeah, usually it's tiered. I mean, the MFAs get the first shots. We have certain roles that we're always going to have professionals in, and then that there's certain roles that undergraduates would work in too. But we have the main stage theater, which is the other shows, which is who's doing Midsummer Night's Dream, and that's kind of the land of the undergraduate higher side productions. So they have multiple opportunities, and we have a film program that's growing by leaps and bounds right now too. Our students have nonstop work to do. I've got 7 of them working for me today in the office, and who knows what's going to happen when I get back there.
And they're so eager and they're so talented, and
Yes.
then where do they go? I mean, it's so hard to make a living in the performing arts.
Very hard, and especially here, though. We are getting a lot of students with the film and television presence in Louisiana who are getting work a fair amount here too. But Georgia's taken so many of those jobs over the last 5 or 6 years. But then we have a lot of people in New York and LA and some in Chicago. I'll tell you what we have lots of too. We have a lot of teachers in this state, talented teachers program, teaching there are a lot of drama programs in the state. I'm really surprised, being from Alabama. The big schools had it, but they didn't have necessarily as much dedicated staff to it. But there's schools in Baton Rouge that have 2-3 teachers in their theater programs.
You're listening to Out to Lunch. I'm Stephanie Riegel. I'm talking with Jamie Ray of Air Seekers Acrobatic Movement and Vastine Stabler of Swine Palace. We'll be right back after this very short break. You're listening to Out to Lunch. I'm Stephanie Riegel. I'm talking to Vastine Stabler of Swine Palace and Jamie Ray of Air Seekers Acrobatic Movement. Jamie, tell us a little bit about your school. How many students do you have, and where is your studio?
So I have about 50 students. I don't have a head count right now, but between
that's a pretty
partner
good number.
acrobatics, hand balancing, and then the aerial silk stuff that I do, I would say
Private classes or group classes, or
we
how
do
does
group
it work?
classes and privates.
Okay.
So I teach at Uptown Climbing, where I've been with those guys since Uptown was just an idea before we started building. So I was lucky enough to get to have the structure reinforced to support acrobatic and aerial movement while it was being built. So get to do that, and so I'll do like a beginner sling class, and then partner acrobatics classes, and then we move into, I have a home studio in my home that I do my intermediate classes so that the students can dress up, because it's a big part of what I do is all performance. It's all geared towards performance, so they like the privacy of my home studio so they can wear their leotards and things like that. But yeah, so I teach out of Uptown predominantly, but I do offer private classes at my home as well.
How much does it cost to take a class?
It depends on a lot of things. There's sort of an equation in place where it's like, what's the difficulty level of what you want to learn, and then also like things like what apparatus are you wanting to be on, or what if it requires me to change out the apparatus every time, or if you just want to learn hand balancing, that's right there on the floor. If you just want to do conditioning, so kind of between 50 and 90 an hour for my privates.
Not bad.
No, it's not.
And I would imagine most of them are fairly young women?
Women are, yes, my predominant demographic, but I do have a good number of men who practice partner acrobatics. So, they want to base, and then some of them even want to fly, and I love when that happens. I always think that's just, it's a joy for me to watch 2 large men throwing each other around. I'm just like, there's something about it. so yeah.
That's great. Okay, Vastine, I want to talk to you a little bit about the mission of Swine Palace, because I know that, they produce local, a lot of times
Yes.
local or regional plays,
Yes.
and sometimes a little bit edgy. Sometimes sort of
Yeah,
pushing.
it is.
Things that you might not be able to see somewhere else in this market. How does that work for you?
Well, it's great because we do have a mission to have a social statement and social exploration of the issues that we are discussing today. And I know, like in the first show we did this year, we did a show called Glory, and in that show deals with gun violence and kind of a strain aspect of it, in the sense that no, I can say this now that the play's over. There's an office shooting in it, where mass shooting that happens at intermission, and then the play all of a sudden becomes about how people respond to these things.
Right.
So you're thinking it's all about workplace violence, which it is, but all of a sudden it comes about kind of the selfishness that people have after these sort of situations, people selling their stories and all this stuff. It's very interesting, dangerous kind of play to do, and then we just did a play. I can't even, it's so complicated to explain in a short time. I spent a lot of time promoting it, and I still haven't figured out a couple of good lines to do it, but it's kind of a time-traveling exploration of oil and the relationship.
I read about it.
And the exploration of the relationship between a mother and daughter, and somehow that works together.
And the scripts, I mean, are these plays that have been shown somewhere else, or they're making their premiere? Are they local writers?
It's interesting. We just selected our season for next year, which we hadn't even announced yet. But so, for instance, one of the plays we're going to do is a show called Airness. And this was written by an LSU graduate. And so it's very exciting, but it's a play about the really true world of air guitar championships. And it follows that. But it's a weird kind of light topic that has a deep kind of exploration into other things, and it's very funny and it's fun, but it's so we do that, but then also we're doing an original version of this play. It's been done as a one-person show, of a show about the Title IX, and the person who is in charge, who's the person who sued to make that happen, and because it's I got to remember what the anniversary it is coming up of the what's the 19th Amendment. It's coming up, and so the whole season we're doing next year are going to be written by women and directed by women, because we're going to be celebrating that. So, every show I have next year, all four between the main stage and Swine Palace, all have serious social issues, but hopefully are very entertaining too, because we don't want audiences.
No.
But we want them to be challenged. We want them to be pulled deeply into it. This type of shows you go in that you're really pulled into.
Absolutely.
Because that's one of the unique things theater do. People ask me, what's the difference between theater and film and television? I said, well, they all have different missions, and you respond to all of them in different ways. And there is this community shared experience that you can have in theater that you don't have in other things. It's really strange. If you do a theater show, sometimes it has too much action, it just tires you out. But if you do a movie that has as much talking as a play has, that tires you out as well. But you can have that conversation with audience back and forth.
Interesting, yeah.
You can have a long monologue and be wrapped the whole time.
Very, very interesting.
So.
Jamie, I bet you get very worn out flying through the air at performances. Do you script your performances? Do you choreograph them, or do you all collaborate, or this is another element of what you do?
Up until now, I have, written and choreographed all of the shows that we've put on. But I also really love to challenge my performers to add their own sort of personality to things. And I, like I said, I'm at a point now with a lot of my performers that have been my students for the past few years have gotten to a point where they can really think for themselves, and I don't have to do it at all anymore. I can just sort of let them fly, and that's probably the best part of it, is just watching them do their own thing. So,
but when someone calls you to perform at a party, or you mentioned a wedding, I mean, you'll make up the routine, and you'll assign the performer or two or three, or maybe do it yourself.
Yeah, so sort of examples of with a wedding, it's typically they just want something pretty. It's not, you know what I mean. They don't
like
want
at
you
the
to come
reception,
in and,
twirling around in the corner on silks.
Yeah, so what we'll offer like ambient, so that's kind of like what's happening alongside everything else. So people can be eating or talking or whatever, and then there's another side of it that's a spotlighted performance where you're asked to please have a seat and watch this aerialist. So it goes both ways, but anytime I'm asked to tell a story, I'm gung-ho to do it.
So you have portable rigs?
Yes, absolutely. And I've even gotten to perform in some really interesting places. I did a wedding off of the Tree of Life in Audubon Park.
Nice.
Which was probably the coolest thing. Now they tell you don't perform off of trees. So it's sort of like frowned upon, but I was new and I didn't know that, and we had permission, so I was okay, so we did it.
Is insurance an issue? I mean, do you have to have some sort of extreme
Oh, I have
liability
some killer
insurance?
insurance, absolutely. Yeah.
Is that price that gets passed along to the customers? I mean, I guess you'd have to factor that into your price because it's
Sure.
probably not cheap to hire an aerialist.
No, not cheap, and you have to factor in. It's not just the 5 minutes that we're in the air. It's the training that we do, the diet that we have to be on, all of the things that go into the years of experience that get you that 5 minutes of entertainment. So, and the insurance is definitely not inexpensive. So.
Right. And is there any sort of certification you need to train people in this, like you would if you were a gymnast, professionally?
Seriously, in most movement arts, you don't need a certification to become a dance teacher. Most dance teachers just start teaching after years of dance, and it's the same way with circus. A lot of people don't have certifications. I did go complete one, but it's not necessary. I also completed one for training for partner acrobatics. I work with a company called Acro Revolution, and they're amazing. They put on these huge conventions all over the world, and I get to go teach at them, and it's a lot of fun to be a teacher. And in those scenarios, they do want you to have certifications, but just to teach out of your home or out of like at my gym, they wanted a certification, but a lot of them don't have them. There's really no.
That's interesting.
Right, it's
That's
the wild,
really
wild west, you know.
Wow. Vastine, we were talking about your plays, and I'm just wondering, does it work to your favor in terms of like raising money to offer this sort of cutting edge stuff that you're not going to see anywhere else, or does it sometimes make it harder because people in Baton Rouge aren't? They're conservative.
We've been around for 28 years, something like that right now. And so I think a lot of people who are the ones who fund and support us are the ones who already know what we're about.
They know who you are.
I mean, theater in general, I used to tell people, I said, when you're trying to get an audience out of theater, and this shows how old I was, I used to say, unless you're doing Cats, now I'll say, unless you're doing Wicked, or unless you're doing Hamilton,
There you go.
You're not going to have more than 10% of the population who is really interested in going to see that play. And, one of the big challenges for us as a business is how do we find those 10 within a pool of
That's small to begin with,
and
right?
so, and one reason we love to sponsor, WRKF is because they're very much, most of our audience members are listeners.
That's great.
To your station. Yeah. And so we've always liked to be connected with y'all in one way or another because they're very, but it's weird because I used to do this Southern New Play Festival in Alabama for years, and a lot of times what we did to bring in the audience is we bring in a playwright, like Louisiana native Rebecca Wells, who did Yaya Sisterhood, and so we bring it in because it bring in a new audience. But then we found, I assumed that all book readers were theater goers. But they're not. It's a lot of them are. But so we find that core audience, the people that like us, and then we promote it, and they're used to us doing that.
And
type
that's
of work.
your niche following. Well, we have very limited time, but y'all tell me real quick, what's your next 3 years look like? What is your goal for you, Jamie?
Just expanding the performance community even further and giving more and more opportunities for these artists to come and showcase their talents, and sort of letting Baton Rouge become the hub of movement that I feel like it can be.
Fantastic. Vastine for Swine Palace?
Well, I think it's a lot. We're making a huge emphasis this summer on subscription growth and that sort of effort to rebuild that core audience again and to bring people who don't know that they love us yet until they get here.
Get the word out. Well, Vastine Stabler and Jamie Ray, y'all are both contributing so much to the arts and culture of Baton Rouge. And, a city really isn't a community unless it has a vibrant performing arts scene. So thank you so much for what y'all are doing and for joining me today on Out to Lunch. It's been a pleasure having you with me.
Thank you.
Thanks for having me.
My guests today on Out to Lunch have been Jamie Ray of Air Seekers Acrobatic Movement and Vastine Stabler of Swine Palace. If you want to know what we all look like, you can find photos from the show on itsbatonrouge.la and on our Out to Lunch Baton Rouge social media. Out to Lunch is a production of INO Broadcasting for itsbatonrouge.la and WRKF 89.3 FM. The producer of our show is Grant Morris. Our technical producer is Eric Merle. Our associate producer is Peter Raschuti. Our Baton Rouge business consultants are Charlie D'Agostino, Dave Winwood, and Ann Edelman. Today's show was engineered by Colin Peden. I'm Stephanie Riegel. Thanks for joining me. I look forward to meeting you again next week around the table here at Mansur's for more business Baton Rouge style on Out to Lunch.
Out to Lunch Baton Rouge is recorded live over lunch at Mansur's on the Boulevard in Baton Rouge. Mansur's is open for lunch daily 11 to 2, for dinner nightly, and for brunch on Saturdays and Sundays. Mitchell Foreman wrote and performs all the music on Out to Lunch. You can hear Mitchell's music anywhere great jazz is sold or streamed, and at mitchellforeman.com. Major support for Out to Lunch is provided by the law firm of Jones Walker, established in 1937 with over 375 attorneys in offices throughout the U.S., providing a comprehensive range of services to a local, national, and international client base. JonesWalker.com. And by Short & Associates, legal recruiters in Louisiana and Texas. And Orange Theory Fitness, delivering fitness results for a healthier world.